Hi, everyone. We are back with another edition of the Parent Pivot Podcast. We are here to bring you some content that we hope is going to be helpful in ministering to your heart to parents of adult children. We're hoping that we can help you pivot from being that instructional parent to a partner. And my name is Steve Cummings.
And I'm Julia Cummings.
And what we like to do every time we open up our podcast is we just want to let you know we are not experts, are we?
No, we're trying to figure it out right along with you
Right.
of how this all works and how it works best.
Right. And I think one of the things, in fact, we were on vacation down in Florida. We were above Hurricane Milton. We enjoyed some time with some family and friends down in Destin. I think one of the things we thought about was we are two people who are very aware of our hearts, and that's both a blessing and a curse.
Definitely. It's kind of, it works for you in some cases, but a lot of times awareness just makes you critical, actually, on some level.
Right. Because we sit there and think, well, because we're aware of how inconsiderate this person is being, or we can see the dynamics walking into a room and going, okay, something's shut down here, where we pick up on it. We automatically, I think that the tendency is to think, well, everybody is as aware as we are. And it's not that we're any better.
No,
it's kind of, it's like, as I work with my men and bringing kingdom, we're trying to become aware of our hearts. The more we're aware of our hearts, the more we become in tune with the Father, and we can see the things that He's working on us, transforming us. But it's not any road to any type of level of elite Christendom or whatever. But where I was going with this is we are aware of a lot of different situations.
Yeah. And actually, in some cases, if you guys are like us, if you have, not like us, but let's say you have a gift. A lot of gifts can feel like curses, and there can be some frustration with that. And honestly, just the realization of how God needs to work on us more is really what comes from that.
Yes.
Because we can't expect others to be like us. We can't expect others to see the world the way we do.
Nope.
And so there's really a lot of standing back and kind of evaluating yourself and trying to figure those things out. So like you said, it's a blessing in some cases. And many times, whatever gift you have is often a curse. And I don't know why we're talking about this.
I'm setting up our podcast because we're aware of these things. There's times when we want to open our mouth, but we don't. We wait for God to give us an opportunity, the Holy Spirit to lead us, So as we're going through life, we have learned from our own mistakes, and we're passing a lot of that on to you. We both are pastorally trained counselors in the state of Georgia. You're got your shingle hanging up, and you're meeting with women, and we've even gained some folks through our Parent Pivot podcast, and that's awesome. And where I'm going with this is, today we're going to talk about, and I can let you explain it, but I want to put it out there first that this podcast, this YouTube cast may cause you to get a little irritated at us and stuff. And so I just want to ask you for grace ahead of time, that you'll be reflective, that you'll kind of look at yourself and go, okay, is this us? And if it's not you, then that's great. But we're going to talk about a very difficult topic, I think.
We are. But before we get started.
Yes, okay.
I wanted to go back
we have no notes.
I wanted to go back to a couple of podcasts that we did a couple of times ago about the book Good Energy.
Okay.
And if you remember, I'd only read a couple of chapters at the time. It is a great book. I still highly recommend it. But there is a chapter that I don't agree with a lot of the stuff she says. She kind of gets into some kind of new age stuff. And it's a chapter on learning to appreciate things and be calm and whatever. But it kind of leads her into this path of kind of new age stuff, even into using psychedelics, things like that. And I just flat out don't agree with a lot of the stuff she says. My hunch is she's probably an atheist. I'm not sure. So she's coming from just a different perspective than our worldview as a Christian worldview. And we've said that many times, it doesn't take away from the truths that we say here.
Right.
So anyway, I just wanted to make that clear. And if you disagree with me, please send me emails or whatever, and I can tell you why I disagree with some of
Yeah,
it.
we're open to everything that you guys, y'all, we say y'all here in the South. We're open to any type of comment y'all have for us. We're coming from a heart that really wants to minister and help parents pivot to being a partner. And sometimes they can get stuck in that parent piece.
Right. So where we're going today is just the idea, and I've heard a couple stories recently. A lot of times we're talking to parents who their children have stopped talking to them,
right,
for whatever reason, and have set up boundaries and yada yada yada. And so we've dealt a lot with that. But I've heard a couple stories recently about parents that have stopped talking to their children,
and even kind of controlled the rest of the family to not talk to somebody.
Right. So it just depends on the situation.
Right.
They're all different, and they're all different, things that are happening that we hear about. But if you are a parent that has stopped talking to your child, I don't get it. To be really honest, I just don't get it. As we've said many, many times, you never stop being the parent, which means that you are held to a higher standard. I don't care how old your kids get. I don't care what they do. We give the message to our kids all the time when they're growing up that there's nothing that they can do that would change our love for them.
Right.
So somebody who stops talking to their child just really baffles me. And the only thing that I can kind of get to with that idea is that somehow you were so offended, and you can't face the conversation that needs to happen.
Right.
Or you have so much pride and you really struggle with control. And so parents, if this is you, figure it out, get some help, because you're really screwing up your whole family, and not just your immediate family,
generations to come,
but generations to come. If you talk to people who have a difficult relationship with their parents, perhaps people who have stopped talking to their parents, things like that, oftentimes you will find in their lineage that this has happened over and over and over again. And the reasons are always different, and they may even be legitimate. Right. But for you to not take a step back and look at that and kind of go, you know what? This has happened in too many generations, and I need to stop.
And it might not just be the relationship with the exact family members that's in there, but there could be, relationships with other friends or things like that, that there's some pattern of fracturing relationships so much that either you've been hurt or there's too much shame. I mean, I think if we could step back and going, what's happening here? What's the truth? What's really happening? Am I afraid to admit something about myself because I will be seen in a different light, and that's weakness, or I'm afraid, or I'm ashamed, whatever. I mean, that mask can be on so tightly that you're willing to risk everything. And what we're saying here is it's not worth risking the legacy of your family.
Right.
It's not worth not seeing grandkids again. Investing. There's so much richness that can come. And really the lie that we're believing is, if I show my weakness and admit that I was broken and did something, whatever, and now, I have a broken relationship, you're right. That's pride. That's shame. And it's like, I think there's even some scripture that will back that up. It's like going, hey, we can lead from a place of partnering that will bring greater depth of richness to your relationships with your kids, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, and their great-grandchildren. So, that could be a huge blockage.
Yeah. And honestly, we've got 4 adult children. I'd be lying if I said that they haven't said things that have hurt me. They have. And I've had to work that through. And one of the things that I do, and that we've done with each other, I'm not always good at this. Steve's actually better at this. Because I'm way more emotional. But is believing the best about the other person. So you can always do that with your children. Believe the best about them. What is it they're trying to do? What are they conveying? What what is their truth? What's their reality? Just believing the best
Right.
about your kids. And that's where I always go. So, as Steve always says, he'll say, like, if we're not getting along or something, he will always say, it's not like I get up in the morning and think, how can I hurt Julia today?
That does not happen.
So it's really believing the best. And so we do that with each other. We do that with our kids. Not always easy, because when you are feeling hurt or attacked or misunderstood,
Yeah, you're going to go into either fight mode, flight mode, or freeze. I mean, think about it. And I guess we're talking to that segment of the parents, not the partners. I wouldn't think partners would be cutting off relationship with their kids, because we're trying to help you establish healthy relationships. But I guess we're talking to that audience and to that segment of parents who fight when they get hurt.
Yeah.
And we're like going,
and they can't let go of that parenting piece.
So they can't let go of that parenting piece. You're the adult child. You've offended me. You've hurt me. So I'm cutting everything off. And that's the segment that we're talking to probably on this podcast.
And as we said many times, the actual effect that you want to have is actually, it's going to backfire on you.
It is.
So you're never going to have the opportunity to speak into their lives again. You might not see them again. You might not see your grandchildren again.
You're not going to see them grow up and graduate from high school and get married and be a part of weddings. It's like, do you really want to head down that road? Is your pride that strong? Are you that unwilling to own your own stuff? I usually use a different word in privacy. Own your own stuff to cause that to happen. There's so many years of wonderful things that are out there ahead of you, and you're creating a trajectory for your family that's heading downward, not upward.
Yeah. And you really have to look at yourself and figure out, do I have a control issue? Do I need to control what other people think of me, what they're going to say to me, all of those things. So that's, once again, we're kind of looking at the parent side. So if you are the adult child of that parent, you might feel really helpless. And how am I supposed to deal with that?
Yeah, because ultimately God wants reconciliation in any relationship.
Right.
He's not going to ignore this. He's working behind the scenes, whether we feel it or not.
Yeah.
It's going on. And I think for the adult child who's been cut off from mom and dad, and things, it's hard, as it would be on the other direction, because we have friends who've been cut off from an adult child for situations. So when you're on that side, it's like, hey, what more can I do? What's my role?
So, and again, this is tough, because if somebody doesn't want to talk to you, there's not a lot you can do, right? I can't force someone to talk to me. I can't force,
especially if they blocked my phone on their phones or.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that.
Like the phone calls I'm going through.
If you've been
you
blocked
think you're leaving a message and you're not.
Right, social media or phones or all that, it's tough. So what do you do? Well, obviously, I'm going to say this again. We're coming from a Christian worldview, so this is where you get on your knees and you just start praying. Your point is not to pray necessarily for change in them, but that humility would happen on both sides, because
softening of the hearts.
You have to have humility yourself.
Yes. And you have to sit on the side too of not pointing the finger like I'm right and you're wrong. I mean, just like we've talked to parents to help them pivot, we say, do you want relationship or do you want to be right?
Right.
Well, the same holds true on the other side of that hey, do you want to be right against mom and dad? Or do you want to be in relationship? And sometimes you can be right, and you're going to need to own what you can own to extend grace and acceptance and move on to have relationship.
Right.
And that's not easy. I mean, that's between you and the Father to say, what is it, Father, that I can do, and how can I do that to establish relationship again without pointing the finger? And I may need to own something. I may need to own how I said it.
Right.
I may need to own that wasn't my intent to do this, and we may need to own that stuff and see where that goes. And it will take a while to begin that healing process, but at least I'm only responsible to the Father for my response.
And in that, everybody's situation is going to be different.
Right.
So there is no black and white answer.
Mm-hmm.
The other piece of this, so let's say there is reconciliation. Let's say there's a conversation that happens and there is some reconciliation. Then as the adult child, you're looking at that parent, honestly, probably thinking they're not super safe, right?
Correct.
They're not super safe. And what am I supposed to do with that? Let's say I'm married. Let's say I have kids. How do I protect this family unit that is actually more important in most regards? To how do I protect this family unit from them being unsafe? And that's where you're going to have to, again, every situation is different, and you're going to have to figure out, okay, how do we be together and have good boundaries? It might be, I'm not going to leave my children with them anymore because this is no longer.
We went through that years ago.
Yeah. So, that type of thing of just feeling like this isn't safe for my kids emotionally, probably physically, it's fine.
Some of that, you're not even communicating that ahead of time. You're not saying, okay, now based on this, we're going to do that. You just slowly just kind of, make those decisions.
Yeah, you're taking a step back on some level.
Yeah,
and
we didn't announce that
out.
when it happened with us.
Yeah. So those are things that are unique to all of you, and you're going to have to figure out. Now, I want to say to the adult child as well that the same story is true of you that we just said to your parents, in the fact that this is your legacy. So if you see this in your, I'm going to say genogram, but not everybody knows what genogram is.
Genogram would just be if you took your family tree and you went to great grandparents and who their kids were, and you're drawing the little, the lines down.
Drawing these lines of relationships.
And all the relationships, the aunts, uncles, cousins on both sides. That's called a genogram.
Divorces, alcoholism, addictions,
like
all that kind of stuff. So, but if you're looking at your family history and you see that this is a problem, it's up to you. Again, the buck stops with you. So if that's not what you want to carry on to your children, then figure out how to do that. I wanted to share a verse. I'm going to read a Bible verse.
Yep.
This is Romans
12:18.
Is that what I said? Yes. Yep. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. And what that verse has always meant a lot to me, because getting along doesn't always matter to other people. Being right matters to a lot of people. So getting along doesn't matter, but I am responsible for me.
Right.
I'm responsible for how I respond to people, how I respond in the world, what I am putting out there to others, how I am loving them. So if God tells me, as much as it depends on you, this is what you need to do.
Right.
Live at peace with others as far as it depends on you. You can't control anyone else, but I can control me.
Right. And as I'm thinking about the adult child perspective, as you were reading that verse, the other verse that came to my mind was when they asked Jesus, well, how many times am I supposed to forgive my brother or my parents or my adult kids? How many times? So 7? And it's like Jesus like going, it's not about the number. You just forgive them. And I think as human beings, we're all so broken. There becomes a certain level of hurt. Like if somebody cut me off or somebody did a small, quote unquote, the smaller thing that irritates me. Oh yeah, I can forgive them. But when someone does something really deeply and really hurts me and now has cut off relationship, blocked me on the phone, wherever, and I can't, there's no relationship at all, I am deeply hurt. Those wounds are harder to just, forgive over. It's not like, forgiveness. And I was taught this, a few years ago, forgiveness and trust are two different things.
And forgiveness doesn't mean that you're in a daily relationship with someone.
No, because for example, if there was a mass murderer that murdered my child, I'm going to want to forgive them at some point. It doesn't happen like the next day, but we've all watched a story on 2020 or 60 Minutes or whatever, where this person has done something bad and they've gone into prison and they've hugged the person and they've forgiven them because it's like, hey, the Father says, as you forgive others, I so forgive you. That's what I want you to hear in this. That doesn't mean I'm going to, when that guy gets out of prison, I'm going to go, would you come over and babysit my kids?
Or be my buddy or my friend.
That becomes a trust issue. Okay, it's like, hey, I'll interact with you, but obviously there was something that triggered you. You murdered my kid. So kind of in the same way, something that's really super hurtful, and a parent cutting off relationship with their adult children is in that area, super hurtful. Forgiveness, I always have to remember, like when I start thinking about, I'm triggered by a certain incident from the past that reminds me of this person, I have to remind myself, Steve, you have forgiven them. Because forgiveness is a process. Sometimes
it is definitely a process.
It's a process. I have to remind myself.
It's over and over again.
Yeah.
Oftentimes.
Okay. But the other thing is like, hey, I might not go back and be best buddies with that person again. And they're not going to be in my inner circle to share every intimate detail. And the same thing can happen with parents who are struggling to pivot and they've cut off relationship. Now, instead of being here, they can be out here where either acquaintances are or surface level friends, until things heal and both sides can see, hey, that you can get to that point. That doesn't happen overnight. What we're saying here is, as it Romans 12:18 was, as it's up to you, make peace with everybody.
Be at peace with
everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. So I hope that all of that is clear. I think it's super sad on either end when I hear that parents aren't talking to kids or kids aren't talking to parents. I think that's really sad. And I know that some families are just so dysfunctional, particularly when there's narcissism involved or addiction involved, which narcissism and addiction often go together, usually do go together, because addicts have to be narcissists to continue on with what they're doing. So they may not have narcissistic personality disorder, but they have narcissism in that.
But and here's the thing: if that's, who admits to themselves, "Oh, I'm a narcissist." Okay, thank you for telling me, and then automatically changes. That really doesn't happen. You're really talking about a heart that it's all about me.
Yeah.
And I don't listen well. I don't allow the Holy Spirit to come in and change that. I manipulate it because I need to be in control. But there's a lot of pain. There's a lot of pain and hurt around a narcissistic heart.
Absolutely.
So for us, it's real easy to get angry because of how they've hurt us. But I think the thing the Father would want us to do is to have compassion, which is the exact opposite of how I'm feeling. Don't get me wrong. I totally get that. I totally understand. This narcissist, I'm just fuming. It causes me to fume. What are you kidding about? They're not a believer, especially if it's mom or dad or, father-in-law, mother-in-law, whatever. I'm angry. Yeah. I don't sit there and think compassion. That's the last thing I want to give that person. Right. But they're so stuck with a mask on, and the shame of shackles is on them so strong that they are lacking the emotional courage and ability to see themselves as God sees them. And that needs to have some compassion along with it, and things. So approach with care.
And you can have compassion and still have protect your family.
Of course.
I'm always amazed. At the same time, I'm always amazed when I hear how adult kids, put up with narcissistic parents forever.
Right.
And they keep with the same dance all the time.
Because
they're never putting up the boundaries, saying, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to play your game. If you want to not talk to me for a month because I said something, that I do hear, actually. I hear that at all ages. I've heard about 90-year-old mothers not talking to their, 60, 70-year-old kids because they said something they didn't like. So, whatever is going on there, you're not going to always see changes in someone older, but you can create changes for yourself. And we've said this before, that you can make some boundaries or consequences when someone's behaving poorly towards you, whether it be an adult child or a parent, that you can set up a boundary and say, you know what, when you talk to me that way, I'm going to walk out and leave. And I'll talk to you when you can talk to me nicely.
Right. And so here's my question for you, Dr. Julia.
Not a doctor.
She's got all the natural talent. She just doesn't want to take all the classes. Anyway, what if I'm an adult child and I'm an avoider? And if I'm facing a narcissistic parent, I'm like, well, you know what? I don't want to deal with this. It's too much of a hassle. Let's just go through with it. And your spouse or your mate, it's maybe their parent. So you're the one that has to speak to them because the in-law child can't unless somehow there's a relationship to do that. Because we always suggest that the natural child needs to talk to the natural parent.
Right. Although an in-law can also talk to that parent if you're respectful.
Right. But now I have an avoider personality when it comes to conflict. So if I've got narcissistic in-laws or parents and I'm an avoider when it comes to conflict, I'm like, you know what? I'm out. I'm not going to deal with this.
Yeah. I mean, that's what avoiders do, right? Again, it kind of goes back to what we said in the beginning that, in order to, you might need to challenge yourself in doing the more difficult thing, but so much of it is in how you say it. So I want to put this out there. I've thought of this over and over again because I have so many people ask me to help them with conversations. So I want to put this out here that if you're not wanting therapy, but you are wanting help with a specific conversation and putting that conversation together, I am more than happy to do a one or two off session with you via virtual. We'll call myself a conversation coach. And
she's very good at relationships. So I would phrase as a relationship coach.
I have a lot of clients,
and she's actually been encouraged by her friends. And you really are good at this. So
I've had a lot of clients who will start talking about something and they'll say, "Can I record that?" Because they want to be able to say that. So if that is you and you'd like to have a one-off session,
one or two.
I would say, sometimes it takes two.
Because you have to hear the story, you got to get all the dynamics behind it. And again, we're only hearing one side of things.
Right.
So Julia's going to come at it from, hey, what does it look like to be on the other side of you? But we're definitely there to help you with your side of responding to the other person.
Yeah.
Whether that's husband, wife, children, uncles, aunts, grandparents,
coworker,
anything. She's the person.
Anyway, if that is you and you'd like to do that, please contact me.
We'll put that in the show notes, both for YouTube and the podcast. We'll give you the links to contact Julia to do that. And you guys can set up times.
Yeah. It will probably be Monday or Friday.
Mondays or Fridays work best for her.
Yes. Virtually.
Yes.
Anyway, so if that is you, let me know. And we can certainly set that up. Because a lot of people don't want therapy and totally get that. But they could use help with, one thing, particularly a hard conversation. So,
Yep. She's your woman.
No, I'm your woman.
No, that's true. She's my woman.
Anyway, sorry if we made you cry.
I'm a romantic at heart.
Yes, you are. Anyway, that's all really I have.
Okay. Well, I hope we've been helpful for you. If you have any comments about this podcast, let us know. You can comment down below here on YouTube. We'd love for you to subscribe on the YouTube cast. We'd love for you to rate us on the podcast. You can direct message us on Instagram and Facebook at Parent Pivot Podcast. You'll find us there. In fact, that's kind of how we're starting to get some content and situations that are coming up. So that's great. Go ahead and do that there. And if you just want to shoot us an email and saying, hey, we love the podcast. Could you tell us more about this? Or we want to get in contact with Julia. Our email address is parentpivotpodcast@gmail.com. So it's always Parent Pivot Podcast, either Instagram, Gmail, or Facebook.
Yes. Like us, review us.
Share us. If you've got friends,
us.
You heard friends and say, hey, you guys need to listen to the podcast. There's YouTube. Steve and Julia are scratching the surface here on this. And we've been around a lot of it. Some of the stuff we already shared, we've already been through. So we know what that part is like. But we'd love to speak into that. Let us know. And come back and join us next Tuesday when we'll upload some more content on the Parent Pivot Podcast.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.